everyone, and welcome to the Room of Requirement. My name is Megan, and I have over 25 years of occult and esoteric practice and study. And I'm going to be talking about mysticism in the universe, exploring the spiritual spectrum. So I'm going to be going over about 8 different types of mysticism today. So let's just dive right in. Okay, but let's talk about the history of it first. So I have taken a couple of paragraphs from a book that I was checking out, and it is on Hindu mysticism. And I've really wanted to express what mysticism really is. And I think that these few paragraphs really describes what it is. And it's really well-rounded viewpoint that I think is really important. So I wanted to read this to you guys. So this is from a book on Hindu mysticism by Surendranath Dasgupta. I'm probably butchering his name. But so he's talking about the history of mysticism and what it all entails. So mysticism in Europe has a definite history. In spite of the variety of its types, it may roughly be described to refer to the belief that God is realized through ecstatic communion with Him. With the Islamic mystics, the Christian mystics, and the devotional mystics, or bhaktas, of India, the vision of God and His grace is attained through devotional communion or devotional rapture of various kinds. But in all mystics, we find a keen sense of the necessity of purity of mind, contentment, ever alert striving for moral goodness, self-abnegation, and one-pointedness with God. There can be no true mysticism without real moral greatness. This mysticism should therefore be distinguished from a mere delusionary faith that God often grants us a vision of Him or appears to us in dreams, or from a faith in the infallibility of the scriptures and so forth. For the latter are often but manifestations of credulity or of a tendency to believe in suggestions, and may often be associated with the inadequate alertness of critical and synthetic intellect. I have defined mysticism as a belief or a view, but in reality it means much more than that. In the life of the true mystics, beliefs exert a great formative influence. There are no mere intellectual registrations of opinions or temporary experiences, but represent the dynamic, the dominant tone of their personality as it develops and perfects itself. Mysticism is not an intellectual theory. It is fundamentally an active, formative, creative, elevating, and ennobling principle of life. Mysticism means a spiritual grasp of the aims and problems of life in a much more real and ultimate manner than is possible to mere reason. A developing life of mysticism means a gradual ascent in the scale of spiritual values, experience, and spiritual ideals. As such, it is many-sided in its development, and as rich and complete as life itself. Regarded from this point of view, mysticism is the basis of all religions, particularly of religion as it appears in the lives of truly religious men. Okay, so the different types of mysticism. Mysticism is a spiritual belief system that centers on the pursuit of achieving direct communion or union with a higher consciousness, divine presence, or ultimate reality. It transcends traditional religious doctrines and often involves personal experiences that are deeply transformative. Here we'll explore some of the varied types of mysticism, each with its unique characteristics and practices. So now we're going to talk about Christian mysticism, and it is really broad. So there are, I think, 46,000, there may be more denominations of Christianity. And anytime you have that many sects or divisions, you're going to have mysticism that is embedded in the different types. So I'm just going to name off a few so you can get an idea. So there's Catholicism, Protestantism, Eastern Orthodoxy, Pentecostalism, Baptism, Lutheranism, and Methodism. Christian mysticism is an integral part of Christianity that seeks a direct experience of God. It often involves practices such as prayer, meditation, and contemplation. Key figures include Saint Teresa and Saint John of the Cross, who emphasize the importance of inner spiritual journeys and the, quote, dark night of the soul. So the dark night of the soul means something different in Christianity than it does in modern times. And there's various different ideas of what the dark night of the soul is. So in Christianity, it's basically when you lose all faith and you're going through a rough time in life and everything seems to be just going downhill and nothing's really good, and then you end up losing your faith in God. And so basically there are different forms of that. So in modern times, when we say the dark night of the soul, it's just periods of depression where you feel like you're not connected to the divine. You are not feeling like you have someone out there that you can turn to, and you kind of, it's like a depressive state that you're in. It can last days, weeks, months, even years. I've been in these states before where I've kind of questioned everything, and how it ties into your spiritual path is once you get up in elevation during your spiritual path and you get farther along on your journey, you're going to have these moments where it's like you all of a sudden think, oh my God, I don't know anything. And everything that I have studied before, it means absolutely nothing because I have stumbled across this new thing that completely negates everything that I was studying before. And so when I say dark night of the soul, for me, that's what it means. It means like there's just kind of like this death of the old self and a rebirth of the new self. And I've had several periods like that where throughout my journey where I'll be like, oh my gosh, like I don't know anything. I think I know all this stuff. I thought I had it figured out, and I don't have it figured out at all. So to me, that is like the essence of the dark night of the soul in modern terms, like if you're on your spiritual path. Okay, so in Christian mysticism, there is 3 broad types. Okay, so the many forms that Christian mysticism has taken during the last 2 millennia can be divided into 3 broad types. These types, however, should not be seen as mutually exclusive, since some mystics make use of all of them. So you guys know I have an occult background, esoteric background. So I was deep into the secret or esoteric orders, Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism. So Rosicrucianism is heavily tied into Christian mysticism. And so that's where I get a lot of like my knowledge was like hidden knowledge, things that aren't really readily available out there. I studied all of this stuff, my background in high magic, ceremonial magic. It's heavily tied into Christian mysticism as well as especially Jewish mysticism, which I'll discuss a little bit later. And so that's where my background knowledge comes from, is because I studied this stuff for years and all these orders. And you have to, when you get up to, when you start practicing high magic in any form, it's heavily reliant on all of this. And so that's how I got into the world of mysticism, because I studied so many different practices, spiritual beliefs. I've looked at everything over the years. And so I know my, all of my videos are like, I have various different belief systems in there. And it's just because I've integrated all of them and I've used all of them, over the years. And I think that has created a more well-rounded understanding of all of the different types of mysticism. And so I used to call myself an occultist, but now I call myself a mystic, because those things will get you to a certain point, and then you realize the ultimate goal, which is communion with the divine. So you want direct communication and communion with the divine. And you can go about all these different ways of doing it, and they will get you there eventually. But that's how I'm at. That's why and how I got to where I'm at. And into mysticism was because I seen the truth in all of it. And it all has one goal. And so that's why, I'm so into this realm and all these different ways of looking at things from all the different cultures and all the different practices, is because they all have the same underlying message, right? And it's how to get you directly connected to the divine. So sorry about that little sidetrack there. I just kind of wanted to explain that point because it popped up in my head. It was something that I wanted to talk about. If you've seen the rest of my videos, you can see that it's really varied, and I cover several different, you know, belief systems, spiritual practices, all those things, because that's my background. Because that's all I did was I'm an academic, so I studied all of this stuff. I'm completely self-taught, studied all of this stuff myself, and so that's why I have such a very diverse background, and so my content is very diverse because I want to be able to show everybody that whatever path you pick, it's going to get you to the same place. You may go down a few different paths, side paths, go on some side quests, go down some rabbit holes, all these different things. But in essence, if you've been doing this long enough, you'll figure out you're going to end up in the same spot no matter what you do. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and dive right in. So the earliest form of Christian mysticism was the Christ mysticism of Paul and John. Although Christian mysticism is its traditional expression, has centered on the desire for union with God, Christ mysticism has always been present in the church. The Eastern Church emphasized the divine light that appeared to the disciples at the Transfiguration, and mystics sought to identify with this light of Christ in his divine glory. Simeon says of a certain mystic that, quote, he possessed Christ wholly. He was, in fact, entirely Christ, end quote. As a result of the influence of Augustine in the Catholic West, it is in and through the one Christ, the union of the head and body that is the church, that humans come to experience God. Trinitarian mysticism. Pure God mysticism is rare in Christianity, though not unknown. Christ is God incarnate is the Word, the second person of the Trinity, and the Christian mysticism has, from an early era, exhibited a strong Trinitarian dimension, though this has been understood in different ways. What ties the diverse forms of Trinitarian mysticism together is the insistence that through Christ, the Christian comes to partake of the inner life of the Trinity. Then there is negative mysticism, or God and the Godhead. The most daring forms of Christian mysticism have emphasized the absolute unknowability of God. They suggest that true contact with the transcendent involves going beyond all that we speak of as God, even the Trinity, to an inner, quote, God beyond God, a divine darkness or desert in which all distinction is lost. This form of mystical atheism has seemed suspicious to established religion. Its adherents have usually tried to calm the suspicions of the Orthodox by an insistence on the necessity, though incompleteness, of the affirmative ways to God. Okay, so now we're going to talk about Islamic mysticism, also known as Sufism. So Sufism is the mystical branch of Islam, focusing on the inward search for God and shunning materialism. Sufis seek to attain spiritual closeness and union with Allah through practices like dhikr, remembrance of God, through poetry, music, and dance. Famous Sufi mystics include Rumi and al-Ghazali. Islamic mysticism had several stages of growth, including 1, the appearance of early aestheticism, 2, the development of a classical mysticism of divine love, and 3, the rise and proliferation of fraternal orders of mystics. Despite these general stages, however, the history of Islamic mysticism is largely a history of individual mystic experience. Jewish mysticism, or Kabbalah. So I'm going to talk about the Tree of Life in Gematria briefly here. So Jewish mysticism is heavily into the Tree of Life, the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, and then there is the 10 Sephiro, the 11th Sephiro being Da'at, which is hidden knowledge. And so basically it's all based on the Tree of Life. I'm not going to go super into this. I can if you guys want to. If you want to drop it in the comments below, I could do a video on just Jewish mysticism and the Kabbalah if you want to. They're based on the 7 Hermetic principles as well. And so the Tree of Life has all kinds of correspondences, angelic, planetary, color, all of that stuff. There's a lot that goes into Jewish mysticism. They also practice something called gematria, which is the alphanumeric code that they use. It started out in decoding verses from the Bible through numbers, but it's something that is heavily ingrained in Kabbalah or Kabbalah, however you want to pronounce it. Sometimes you'll see this with a Q, sometimes with a C. The spelling of Kabbalah, it's basically all the same thing. It just depends on what school of thought, what teacher, whoever's writing the book, they'll spell it differently. But so Jewish mysticism, known as Kabbalah, delves into the mystical aspects of Judaism, exploring the nature of God, the universe, and the human soul. It interprets the Torah on a deeper level, seeking hidden meanings and divine wisdom. Central to the Kabbalistic thought is the concept of the Sephiroth, 10 attributes through which God interacts with the world. Kabbalists aim to achieve spiritual enlightenment and closeness to God through meditation, study, and prayer. So they also study the Zohar as well. Zohar is about 26 volumes. I only read the first volume of the Zohar. They say that if you read the Zohar, you will become enlightened just by reading it. I found that fascinating, so I wanted to check it out. Okay, so now let's talk about Hindu mysticism. So Hindu mysticism encompasses a range of spiritual practices and philosophies aimed at realizing the true nature of the self and its unity with the divine. Key concepts including the realization of the Brahman, the ultimate reality, and the understanding of the Atman, the inner self. Practices like yoga, meditation, and devotion or bhakti guide practitioners towards self-realization and the liberation, also called moksha. Mysticism in Hinduism is a path to transcend the cycle of birth and rebirth and achieve union with the divine consciousness. So, if you're studying Hindu mysticism, you're going to come across the Bhagavad Gita, the Vedas, the Upanishads. These are their sacred texts. If you guys have seen my post, I always quote from the Bhagavad Gita. A fantastic book to read. And so let's go ahead and get more into this. So Hinduism is a religion of profound magic, the most precious and truly supernatural religion on the planet Earth. It has also been so and should be perpetuated as such for centuries and centuries into the future. The Vedas glow with the wisdom of the magic mind, the seeing of the interconnectedness between deity, devas, nature, and man. In the Hindu Vedic perception, nature is alive with beings. Nature is actually the energy expression of deva-like beings. The great yanjas of fire and offering sought to establish communication between man and God and the gods. Buddhist mysticism. So Buddhist mysticism centers on the pursuit of enlightenment through understanding the nature of reality, suffering, and the self. It emphasizes mindfulness, meditation, and the cultivation of wisdom and compassion. The mystical experience in Buddhism often involves the realization of emptiness and the interconnection of all things. By transcending the illusion of the separate self, practitioners aim to achieve nirvana, a state of perfect peace and liberation from suffering. Early Buddhist mysticism was concerned with the emptying of the subjective being, considered to be the greatest obstacle to the individual's spiritual growth. This passing into a new dimension of reality is described in terms of a flame going out. In this emptying process, the limits of the individual's being are supposedly transcended. The experience of this new dimension of reality is a vision that goes far beyond the reach of mere logic and normal perception. The master, it is believed, leads the student to compassion through meditation on the transitories of life, the relation of cause and effect of one's actions, and the suffering of humanity. After sympathy for human suffering has been aroused, the student is taught yogic or contemplative exercises that help to produce inner experiences corresponding to the various stages of spiritual growth. Advancement towards enlightenment involves the identification of the initiate with the deities that represent various cosmic forces. These gods are first visualized with the help of mudras, meditative gestures or postures, mantras, which are sacred syllables and phrases, and icons portrayed in a mandala, all of which are believed to possess the essence of the divinities to be invoked after the After the visualization, the initiate identifies with the divinities and finds that each in turn is voidness. Okay, Taoist mysticism. Taoist mysticism is rooted in the teachings of Laozi and the Tao Te Ching, emphasizing living in harmony with the Tao, the fundamental nature of the universe. It values simplicity, humility, and the flow of life, encouraging practitioners to align with the natural order. Through practices such as meditation, Tai Chi, and Qigong, Taoists seek to cultivate inner peace and balance. Mystical experience in Taoism involve merging with the Tao and experiencing unity with all things. Unlike the Hindu traditions, the Taoist mysticism of China locates the unitive in the perceptible world. The Tao, Chinese way or road, is both transcendence and immanent, both spiritual and material. The Tao is unnameable and ineffable, yet it is present in and as all things. Although lay Taoists do not necessarily seek mystical experiences, for the initiated Taoist, priest and whole of Taoism is mystical. The mystical nature of Taoism is indicated in the, quote, sacrifice of writings, end quote, which is performed in a temple or other designated area. Indigenous mysticism, also known as shamanism. So indigenous mysticism encompasses the spiritual beliefs and practices of various indigenous cultures worldwide. It emphasizes a deep connection to nature, the land, and ancestral spirits. Rituals, ceremonies, and storytelling play crucial roles in maintaining spiritual harmony and understanding the interconnectedness of all life. Indigenous mysticism often involves vision quest, shamanic journeys, and the belief in the spiritual essence of the natural world, fostering respect and reverence for all living beings. The mystical experience indigenous to the native North American tribal people stands out uniquely in the history of religions in that it is grounded in the vision of a sacred world which underlies, develops, and is manifestly present within the entire empirical order. The sacred dimension, although being qualitatively different from the phenomenal realm, is not regarded as, quote, otherworldly or transcendently beyond in the same way as it is meant in the monotheistic or monistic apprehensions of the divine. In this sense, the Native American does not transcend the world in Christian or Vedantic or Neoplatonic manner. Rather, he plunges into the world and experiences himself and the earth with all of its myriad phenomena as being totally immersed in and revelatory of the divine reality. New Age mysticism. New Age mysticism is a modern spiritual movement that draws from various religious traditions, emphasizing personal growth, healing, and holistic well-being. It incorporates elements of astrology, energy healing, meditation, and channeling. New Age practitioners often believe in the interconnectedness of all life and the potential for spiritual awakening. This form of mysticism encourages individuals to explore their inner selves, develop intuition, and embrace global, inclusive spirituality. New Age is a range of spiritual or religious practices and beliefs which rapidly grew in Western society during the early 1970s. Its highly eclectic and unsystematic structure makes a precise definition difficult. Although many scholars considered it a religious movement, its adherents typically see it as spiritual or as unifying mind, body, spirit, and rarely use the term New Age themselves. Scholars often call it the New Age movement, although others contest this term and suggest it's better seen as a milieu or zeitgeist. As a form of Western esotericism, the New Age drew heavily upon esoteric traditions such as the occultism of the 18th and 19th centuries, including the work of Emanuel Swedenborg and Franz Mesmer, as well as spiritualism, New Thought, and Theosophy. More immediately, it arose from mid-20th century influences such as the UFO religions in the 1950s and the counterculture in the 1960s, and the human potential movement. Its exact origins remain contested, but it became a major movement in the 1970s, at which time it was centered largely in the United Kingdom. It expanded widely in the 1980s and 1990s, and particularly the United States. For those of us who have been around long enough, we remember this. Despite its eclectic nature, the New Age has several main currents. Theologically, the New Age typically accepts a holistic form of divinity that pervades the universe, including human beings themselves, leading to a strong emphasis on the spiritual authority of the self. This is accompanied by common belief in a variety of semi-divine, non-human entities such as angels, with whom humans can communicate, particularly by channeling through a human intermediary. Typically viewing history as divided into spiritual ages, a common New Age belief is in a forgotten age of great technological advancement and spiritual wisdom, declining into periods of increasing violence and spiritual degeneracy, which will now be remedied by the emergence of the Age of Aquarius, from which the Milieu gets its name. There is also a strong focus on healing, particularly using forms of alternative medicine and an emphasis on unifying science with spirituality. In conclusion, mysticism is a rich and diverse field that spans across cultures and religions. Each type offers unique perspectives on the nature of the divine and the pathways to spiritual enlightenment. Whether through meditation, prayer, or ritual, mysticism provides profound avenues for exploring the mysteries of existence. Okay, guys, so that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this one. You can drop in the comments below what is your favorite type of mysticism and ones that you've practiced. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say and what your experience is. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.